I realized really quickly when I was a college player that being a college coach was incredibly demanding of your time, incredibly demanding of your family. And so I went through the arc in my head of saying, maybe this isn't what's best for me wanting to have a family, etc. Paired up with, there's just an incredible business school and track at K-State where I was walking away with an accounting degree, but these firms were hiring us when we were juniors. So I had already accepted a position 2 years before I thought I would need to make a decision. And so it became that also sort of loyalty factor in all of us coaches. I would say that I said, man, I've already committed to doing this. I'm going to give it a shot. I lasted 7 months, one busy season, before I called Bill Snyder and said, I'll work for free. I just want to get back into it because I realized really quickly that I think what would be best for my family is for me to be doing something that's purpose-driven and something that is something that's impactful and brings passion out of me.
Welcome to Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. Each episode pulls back the curtain on the coaching profession, spotlighting voices from every level of the game and offering lessons and insights for your own path. But first, a word from CoachComm.
When the game's on the line, your play call can mean the difference between winning and losing. Don't let poor communication cost you the game. For 35 years, CoachComm has been the trusted leader in coaching communication, delivering solutions with unmatched sound quality, performance, and durability. That's why thousands of coaches in high schools across the country trust CoachComm. You put in the hours to prepare. Make sure your communication delivers when it counts. CoachComm, giving coaches the ultimate competitive edge. Visit CoachComm.com to learn more.
Follow Inside the Headset on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. We drop new episodes each week, so hit that follow button and never miss a moment. Now, let's get inside the headset.
Coach, what's happening, man? How we doing?
I'm doing great, Mario. I'm currently on a little vacation with my wife. We're in the July, section of things, and we're actually in Boston celebrating our anniversary and taking a little break from the Freedom Trail to talk some profession here. So excited to do it.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, happy anniversary to y'all too, man. Hopefully you enjoy, and I look forward to diving in with you. So that's what we're going to do. Now, obviously, we talked a little bit for the podcast, so I'm really excited to kind of see how this folds here. When did you know you wanted to be a part of the profession?
Well, it's one of those things where I would say when I was real young, and I knew that my dream of maybe playing the NFL, because I've always been in love with football, playing the NFL was probably not going to work out. And I probably knew that probably a little sooner than most, but I'd say when I was a young guy entering high school, I said to myself, I think I want to be a coach. I didn't know at what level necessarily, but I'd always been in love with college football. My dad, he played at Kansas State, and he has been the color analyst for their radio for now moving on close to 40 years. So I grew up around the game and had an affection for it and knew I wanted to be a part of it. I always loved being part of teams, but, it was probably then. And then I ended up walking on to K-State with in mind of saying, I think I want to learn how to be a coach. And so I fell in love with being a part of a team. And then I also fell in love with teaching, and so early on when I was a young person, and it only grew from there once I got more involved.
Now, so obviously that was kind of your goal in mind, but you tell me that you end up being a CPA, kind of your first job. So at some point, something didn't match up there. So when what ended up pushing you down that track?
Well, it was a little bit of a combination of I realized really quickly when I was a college player that being a college coach was incredibly demanding of your time, incredibly demanding of your family. And so I went through the arc in my head of saying, maybe this isn't what's best for me wanting to have a family, etc. Paired up with, there's just an incredible business school and track at K-State where I was walking away with an accounting degree, but these firms were hiring us when we were juniors. So I had already accepted a position 2 years before I thought I would need to make a decision. And so it became that also sort of loyalty factor in all of us coaches. I would say that I said, man, I've already committed to doing this. I'm going to give it a shot. I lasted 7 months, one busy season, before I called Bill Snyder and said, I'll work for free. I just want to get back into it, because I realized really quickly that I think what would be best for my family is for me to be doing something that's purpose driven and something that is something that's impactful and brings passion out of me. And now I'm married, and I couldn't think of a better thing I could be doing to, be a good husband and of being somebody that's passionate about what they do and incorporates that family aspect, as we all really realize is a part of this whole deal. So that was a little bit of a detour, but it ended up in a lot of ways making me a better coach. So that's what that story is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So playing career at Kansas State, 11-15. We're able to have some success, obviously, with Bill Snyder, legendary, Hall of Fame coach. Able to have some success in the 2012, win a Big 12 championship, and ultimately going into your senior year, you're a captain for a Kansas State football team. Now, I mean, that's gotta hold that with a immense amount of pride. And you already kind of made a decent segue for me here. You CPA for a little bit. You say, hey, you know what? This ain't for me. I want to get back in. I want to get back in this football thing. So you call up Coach Snyder. Just talk a little bit about that conversation and ultimately what ended up leading to you starting as a GA there.
Right. It was a number of conversations. Andre Coleman, our receivers coach, Colin Klein, our quarterbacks coach. Coach Coleman, obviously, he coached me, and so that was a good connection. And then Colin was a groomsman at my wedding. He's one of my best friends. I was circulating with them, hey, like, I'm starting to get interested. What do you guys think? And they, fortunately for me, were very encouraging to say, hey, reach out to Coach Snyder. And so I eventually did, and the conversation was, Coach, I know that, I don't necessarily have a ton of experience other than being a player here, but, if there's any opportunity, and I think that's an important thing, like just getting your foot in the door. I tell young coaches all the time because I just had a call from one of my former players, Coach, I want to get involved. Well, I said, well, something you got to be ready to do is do anything. Mm-hmm. And so that was sort of what I proposed. I was very fortunate. One of our offensive GAs just exited when I was proposing. And so it was a nice fit. They were excited that they had some familiarity and a young guy that they could, project would do a good job, hopefully. And I was a willing guy. So, and involved Sean Snyder too, his son, our special teams coordinator, who I played a ton for. Like, I was fortunate that all three of those guys, including Coach Snyder, advocated to say, yeah, we want you. And so I was really, really lucky to jump right into being a graduate assistant. But, like we talked about before the podcast, you learn a lot really quickly about, hey, man, I was a captain. I was a guy that was here for 5 years, and all of a sudden, and you enter the coaching world, you learn really quickly. Like it didn't necessarily matter as much as some of those student coaches that have been there for 4 years.
Right.
They're really, really, really chugging along, doing a great job. So you got to learn quickly. But that was how that process went.
No doubt. And just to bring up the CPA thing again a little bit, like obviously, that's a tough job. That's why you got to have the credentials to be able to do such a job like that. And then, you look at football and it's a game and this, that, or the other. But I mean, it's a tough job, especially early on where you're just doing so much. You're breaking down so much film. You're making calls. You're doing everything. A jack of all trades inside the office. Kind of what were some, if you just did a little compare and contrast, like what were some of the things? And also I'd love for you to probably drop in how some of the CPA stuff, maybe not from a financial standpoint, but from a Excel and organization standpoint, might have helped you, be a great GA.
Well, the comparison was what I think helped me feel comfortable making the jump to being a GA or a coach or an unpaid assistant, which is what my expectation was. If that's the case, would I be comfortable leaving? And the answer was yes. But as a CPA, especially as a first year, it's a lot like being a GA. You're working, especially during the busiest seasons, you're working 70, 80 hours, 6 to 7 days a week. You're in a conference room with a bunch of other accountants and you are doing the grunt work. And I realized really quickly the grunt work had nothing to do with a lot of the technical stuff with being an accountant. It was, hey, execute this. And so the value that you brought as a first year was competence of just operating in spreadsheets in Excel. And so I went from saying, man, I'm a great student. I know my stuff. I passed the CPA exam, to actually how I'm providing value is humbling myself to knowing how to execute all these hotkeys without a mouse. Like, never learned that much about it in college. So you put your head down and you said, this is my role, and you attacked it. And I grew a lot in that 7 months. Well, I found a lot of similarities in the coaching side. The hours are similar. But also the ask is, right? Like, a lot of us former players enter that space sometimes and say, man, I know football, and I'm ready to contribute with opinions, and I'm ready to give, I'm ready to instruct. And what you realize really quickly is that is not exactly where your value needs to be at. Right. And I think it's sometimes for many of us a little bit of a shock. It's like, wait a second, why aren't I coaching? No, you're supporting the coaches in a lot of ways. And so I was very fortunate that I was mentored well in that space, but I was in a lot of ways equipped to start providing some of the things, because some solutions needed to be had that required Excel stuff. Well, I was like, hey, I can get us an answer to that. Let me do that. I'll build you something. And I started getting in where I fit in a lot of ways of just supporting, making the processes more efficient, making them be able to be executed with less error. And I leaned in on that Excel stuff, and it allowed me to expand my role quickly, because not only I was a receivers GA, not only Andre Coleman needed my help there, it became the offense could use me, and then it was the defense could use me, and then the recruiting would need, hey, can you build this? And all of a sudden I started adding value. And that what I found was really the key of being a young coach, was like, find where you can add value to the organization, and that helps you prove to others that you can do a good job. And then all anybody wants to do is expand your role. And so, the comparisons, there was a lot, but, ultimately the comparison was, if the hours are going to be the same here, why don't I do something that I'm super passionate about? And then also, realizing, swallowing that pill of like, hey, they don't need me to do the fun stuff yet. They need me to do the stuff that's going to help us win. That is my role. And so I think accepting that, in the accounting side really helped me realize, like, I know I'm great doing whatever you need. Like, I want to just add value. So that's how I, started the journey as a GA.
Man, that is a heck of a soundbite here. This last answer, because, I've given the advice, and I've seen tons of coaches give the advice. Hey, make yourself irreplaceable, bring value to the program. Well, yeah, I brought value. I was a great GA. I broke down the film really good. And you're like, man, every other guy that's going to come in here is going to break down the film really good. Like, what are you going to do to push the envelope a little further? And all of a sudden you're building stuff. And so your absence, that creates a disruption in the program, and once you talk about adding value, that's kind of probably a good barrier or way to measure that. Is if you're gone, does it operate the same? And obviously with these things that you built, it creates value, which ultimately led to you sticking around even beyond your graduate assistant experience. But before we step to that part, I do want to ask you the question, right? You got done playing it in 2015, and you kind of had the gap as you went work in business, but you come back. And so there's juniors and seniors and sophomores that play with you, and they hung out with you in the locker room and listened to your crazy jokes, and maybe saw you at a party or two on Friday night. Like, how do you put the line in the sand and say, hey, I'm a coach now. Our relationship does have to change.
Right. Yeah. It's critical. Right. I would say I leaned into those relationships to help when it came to the coaching side, because what are you ultimately in charge of? It's you a lot of times are running scout teams. A lot of times you're dealing with players that that in today's player, right? They don't accept hard coaching until they know you care about them, right? Yep. And so I really leaned into the fact that, hey, you know who I am, you know who I am. We ran these sprints together. Right. We did the hard stuff together. So if I'm asking you to do something firmly, they accepted it.
Yeah.
a lot better, right? And then when it came to drawing the line in the sand, it's just something that has to be done, right? You have to have that conversation with them. You got to be the one that's, when I'm checking bars in Aggieville at 1 a.m. and I've got a guy across the bar that's about to break curfew. It's like, I'm looking at him like, get your, home.
Yeah.
And they're going to take it from me.
Right.
And that helped a lot. But I ultimately, you have to discipline yourself to separate. You're not a player anymore.
Yeah.
You're not out there to have a good time anymore. And if you want to do that, then you're going to really be hindering yourself as a coach, because everyone's watching.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's watching.
Yeah.
And there's just a way to hide it. And you either want to be a part of this thing as a professional, or you're stuck in the past. And it's amazing how many guys that are stuck, not sure what they want to do there, that it really hurts them.
Yeah.
So, as a professional, use that experience. If you're going back to your former place, use that experience to help you. Use it to enhance the relationships you've already built and help be that connection. Don't let it hurt you.
Amen. 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 Now, let's get back to that kind of transition 2018 to 2019, where you become the special teams quality control, right? So your time is up as a GA. I don't know if it happened at the last minute, but how did you know you were going to kind of be able to stick around and even kind of get promoted within the program?
So interesting. I talk about when people ask me about jobs, especially young coaches, like I tell them there's really like 3 barometers that I use to evaluate, like, is my current situation a really good one, or hey, is this other opportunity a really good one? And they are, experience. Are you growing? Are you expanding your network? And 3, obviously the financial side. And, as a young coach, I encourage guys to not worry about the financial side. That'll come. But the networking piece was one where it's a challenge when you go back to where you formerly played with the same coaching staff.
Yeah.
And I had the incredible circumstances that seemed not so great at the time that ended up really helping was after the 2018 season, when I was offensive GA, we unfortunately lost our last game and we're not going to be below. And a few days later, Coach Snyder decided he's going to retire. And so I'm a second year going on third year GA, and I might get fired. And I was very fortunate that when Chris Kleiman got the job, he held us over, the young guys. And so it was this interesting opportunity where my role wasn't necessarily going to change, but my network just got flipped to a whole new group.
Yeah.
So I'm now the holdover for a brand new staff. So without ever having to even move apartments, I have a new job, right? Like a new set of group. Did the GA thing for, 2-3 months maybe of just drawing up the North Dakota State playbook into K-State format, changing things over for Courtney Messingham and those guys. And I get called into Chris Kleiman's office and he asked me, hey, I'm going to make a QC in charge of special teams. Do you want to do it? You tell me I don't have to go to class anymore. And you wait, I get a little bit of a salary, like no brainer, right? So I had the neat opportunity to be the special teams quality control without a coordinator. I mean, I was delegating basically all the game plan stuff to say, hey, Dan Malone, you and me are punt return. Here's the plan. You present it, stay compliant. And we had 2 really good years, but like, that is another sort of leaning into the former player thing. I had just coached the freshmen and sophomores on scout team for the last 2 years and tried my best to really build good relationships with them. Those were the guys that were all playing on special teams when they were junior seniors.
Yeah.
I knew exactly who I could trust. It was a neat thing. But that was how the transition went. It's a little bit different, a little bit odd, but Chris Kleiman changed my life.
Yeah.
Put me on the special teams track, and here we are.
There you go. Now, I love the fact that you talk about the networking piece, and when you make this transition here in a couple of years to get to South Carolina, I'm gonna ask you a question about a piece of that. But I think you left me with a big question mark here on that part, because you have this 3-month time frame where Climate came in and just like you should have been like, well, I better I better get on Football School, kind of figure out what's going on. So ultimately been held over. And in this 3-month times, he presents you with an opportunity to essentially, have a heavy hand in what's going on from a special team standpoint. In those 3 months, he didn't do that to, everybody. He didn't offer that to everybody, I wouldn't assume. What did you think that you did? Maybe it's a question for him, but what do you think that it was that you did that, kind of captured his attention and let him know that he can trust you in that?
I think I just tried to do my job really, really well. Just tried to do everything I could to show them that, I was a valuable member of the team. I think there was some people that were in his inner circle that were held over as well. Our director of recruiting, Taylor Bratt, has been there for 20 years or so now. He's he's doing so much, but I know he saw me as a freshman walk-on, and he eventually saw value in my work ethic to give me a chance to even play special teams.
Yeah.
When I was, so this is like a 9-year arc, and I know that guy got in his ear and said, "Hey, you do a good job." But I think ultimately the answer to the question is, you don't know who's going to put a word in for you that is going to tip the scale. Because I don't know. That's the answer. I have no idea, other than I went to work every day and tried to do a really good job. But there was more to it. I mean, it was people who may never have had a direct work line with me to converse with me every day. It was, I don't know. I think ultimately my MO from the jump was I tried to just say, I am myself. I'm going to do a really good job, and I'm going to try to add value every day in whatever role you give me. Nothing's too small. But I think it was a combination of that with some help from some people that, told him that had seen me over a long period of time do exactly what we needed, which was that, right? Humble yourself to do a really good job of whatever role you're given. Who helped tip the scales there. I was very, very, very fortunate, but that's ultimately the formula. It's not exotic. It's not, hey, go rub elbows with Coach Joe Blow in his office, go BS with him for 60 minutes a day. No, just do your job. Everyone's looking.
Yeah.
The O-line coach who never does anything with special teams other than field goal, he knows if you're good or not.
Yeah.
He knows.
Right.
And everyone in this profession, which is really neat, everyone has an opinion. And everyone holds their word to a really, really high regard. No one recommends you unless they really believe in it, because they know. And so that's ultimately what it did. And, God willing, I was put on this track, and, help from some people who I might not even know they did help me.
That's right. Now, you look at that you started the business in 2017, it's 2025. You're still an extremely young coach, but, you those early years are so transformational in regards to being in the profession. They make or break a lot of coaches. That time frame in 19 to 20, been in special teams quality control, having a lot to do with what's happening on fourth down and to start the halves and all that kind of stuff, having so much to do with that. And I don't want to say not really getting the spotlight for it, right? You're not the special teams coach inside the book, but you're super responsible for a lot of these things. Each one of these stops, I like to call them a chapter. What would you kind of name that chapter, and what were your takeaways from those 2 years, kind of having that very unique role?
Right. It is an interesting thing, because for all intents and purposes, I was the coordinator, right? But we were compliant, and we worked hard to be compliant with that. Right? And we had some incredible success. And ultimately, I think it's easy for us sometimes to get frustrated about, where's the credit going, et cetera. What I always just remind myself was like, I got thrown into this role as a 25 or 26-year-old with no experience other than being a player. And I should just be super grateful that I'm even given this role and just continue to do a great job. Like, it's part of the loyalty factor of saying, like, yeah, it is a little bit frustrating that no one can, throw credit to the analysts or quality controls at that point, because we aren't coaching, right? But you're building the plans and you're putting all your effort into it. It is frustrating, but I think it's sometimes a little selfish. Like, ultimately, if the team's doing well, you should be really happy.
Yeah.
And that's what we tell our players all the time, right? In this era where they're starting to get money and all that stuff. The people that are going to have the most joy are the ones that their ultimate goal is that the team succeeds. And we were succeeding, and it was phenomenal. And I think in moments where I might have felt a little bit frustrated that, man, it's just, we're doing so good. And if I were a full-time coach right now, I'd be getting more. It's like, you're 25 and this guy, Chris Kleiman, took a chance of a lifetime on you. And why would you ever be frustrated? And so I try to take a posture of gratitude in those situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a challenge for some, and it was a challenge for me. But ultimately, I look back at those years as how fortunate was I to be given almost free reign to be creative with that and be given the opportunity to do that at such a young age. It takes so many years for some to ever be given authority to create football schematics, make decisions. I'm over there scheming up how we're going to block a punt, and I'm 25. It's like, it was incredible. And you learn so much when you're put in that spot, because I had to be in this weird dynamic of, I needed to delegate to full-time coaches who are much older than me, much more experienced than me.
Right.
And I had to tell them what we're going to do. And I had to build individual social dynamics with every single one of them, because everyone's different. Yeah. Everyone operates differently. Everyone wants to be given information in a different way. And what a incredible growth cycle that was for me. Because even to this day, if you're a special teams guy, part of your job, a big part of it, is the social dynamics of your staff. How well can you delegate and give respect and know how to communicate in a way that they reciprocate the respect back to you? Because ultimately, you have to humble yourself to say, we need everybody, and find a way to lean on weaknesses. When they don't do something that you want, how do you react? How do you communicate? It's, because I got to go, hey, go run that drill. You go watch the tape. It isn't what you wanted. I'm the 25-year-old that's got to walk up to them and say, that's not what I wanted. Well, how do I communicate that effectively while maintaining the dynamic? Because I couldn't afford to disrespect them. And even if I wasn't intending to, there's ways they can receive it that way.
No question.
And so it was an interesting day, but the growth was off the charts. So like, that outweighed any credit that I did or didn't get. And two, I was getting the credit internally. Everyone in that staff was looking at me like, yeah, you helped us win. And I think that's ultimately what fuels me in a lot of ways. Is I want to be known as, I'm a good teammate that's helping impact this team and helping it win.
Absolutely.
And I want that from my teammates. And I don't so much care about it from external factors here. But when I have the defensive coordinator, Joe Kleinerman, saying, nice job.
Yeah. Big time.
It's a big deal. Being 25 and hearing that, right?
Yeah. Now, I tell you what's interesting here, really got me sucked into, this portion of it is, there's a group of guys that are going to be fortunate enough to be, 25, 26, 27, I think 30 and under, with a coordinator role, with some type of title, where they're in a meeting and their offensive line coach, if I'm an OC, is some dude that's been doing this longer than I've been in the profession and knows a lot more ball than maybe what you'll ever know. And I've had a handful of those guys on the podcast, and we always kind of break off into this topic a little bit, just that dialogue of conversation and the respect level that you got to have with that guy, but at the same time you got to say, hey coach, this is how I want inside zone blocked, and it's not getting done. When you're sitting here, not a full-time coach running the special teams, you talked about, how you managed it, but were some of those situations intimidating? Were some of those situations tough? Did you ever find yourself, kind of in a pickle, maybe having some of these conversations?
Oh yeah. Challenging was a good word, but yeah, you'd find yourself kind of between a rock and a hard place. Like, I think it teaches you how to have tough conversations.
Yeah, which is huge.
Teaches you that. Like, and that's something that we all, I think, are naturally a little averse to. I've become much more comfortable with it because of it. And it's how you approach it. I mean, I had to approach it from a very humble place when I wanted to adjust something. Yeah. And I learned tools, strategies with each coach on how to make it so I mitigate the potential for it to go the way I don't want. Right? Like, I know I need to have this type of specific conversation with this coach before I have them execute said drill. But I mean, you have to get a great understanding that not everyone communicates the same, and you have to be the one that can be dynamic. Yeah. That's what I learned. And you building the relationship is critical. Like, and this is kind of a funny statement, but I think a lot of us coaches sometimes might like, hey, you don't have to like me, but you got to do what I found. I've got to find a way to make these guys kind of like me.
Yeah.
Because it helps a lot, and it's not being fake or whatever. No, I am myself, but I've got to find a way to show them respect to a point where they're ready to receive something critical from me.
Yeah.
And it's not an overnight thing, but it was a slow build with every single one of those coaches, and some of them had major ruts, and I learned major lessons. Right? Like, here's a good one, and this is maybe a little bit of a tangent, but COVID hit. Okay, and they had just put Mike Tuiasosopo in charge of punt because we just shifted. Somebody left. Well, we're not together, right? We're all at home, and I had this bright idea, man, Mr. Guy that likes to innovate and try new things. I was like, I'm going to build a video playbook of our punt where I voice over every single element of it and distribute it to the players, and it's going to be very valuable for them to learn it remotely. And I don't tell Mike Tuiasosopo about it. I just do it because I'm in my head. I'm like, man, I'm the special team squad control. It's my second year. I know what I'm doing. Blah blah blah. I learned really quickly. You got to loop everybody in. You got to be a master communicator, because this guy calls me and goes, hey, were you going to tell me about this that has to do with my unit? Because technically I'm delegating to these coaches, even though they've gave me such a large part of the role. And I'm sitting there going, how did I not think of that? But it was received as like, he was upset.
Yeah.
And I realized really quick, like, that's on me. That's on me. I have to learn lessons the hard way, and then come to the table where I go back to him and say, Coach, I'm really sorry. I blew it. I don't make it an ego thing where I'm sitting there going, I just worked weeks of man hours to make this really awesome thing. And the first reaction I get is somebody getting upset with me.
Yeah.
And I could have been offended. I could have, but at the end of the day, such a small thing from interpersonal dynamics of the staff, such a small thing could have prevented that, but it was my fault. And that's ultimately what I had to say. This is your fault. Fix it. And he and the coach, Tui, and I have a great relationship. Mm-hmm. But the bridge was strengthened because how I reacted to him correcting me.
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of moments like that. And it's a dynamic thing. So it's something that bring the attitude of what could I have done differently,
yeah,
and attack conflict with that in that way. Like, and I think a lot of people, if you disarm, will give you the benefit and roll on from there and be stronger relationships from there. Because I think too often we give up on each other after one interaction if it doesn't go,
amen, yeah,
as well as it should,
right.
And we just don't have, as special teams guys or coordinators in general, where you have staffs, right? It's going to hurt you if you don't have strong bridges built with as many people as possible.
This business is so unique in regards to, especially when you get on the podcast and you talk about relationships in regards with you and your players. But man, that relationship in that staff room, these guys that you're spending 14, 15 hours a day with, man, sometimes when like you said, that bridge is weak, man, it makes for a tough job. It makes it hard for people to be happy. It makes it hard for you to be successful. And like it or love it, we've all been in those locker rooms where there's some type of fracture in that bridge between somebody, and it's not fun. Now, Man, we're having some great special teams talk because it is really such a unique position. And, I was out the business a little bit before you start seeing special team coordinators only. I think that other position came in and you start seeing that a lot more. It was the tight ends slash special teams coordinator. When I was a special teams coordinator, I was a running backs coach. And, I still had to install for the week. I had to make sure the dudes knew how to run the inside zone, all that kind of stuff. And then I had to go do the special teams, but it was important because that was my side of the ball. And,
right.
I'll be the one to kind of at least bring up the stereotypical topic of, you got these guys that you got to implore to have responsibility. They're responsible for the front line on the kickoff return, and maybe their priority is a little bit more worried about their group, their linebackers playing well. How do you motivate those guys to be motivated about special teams?
I try here at Toledo, and I really learned this from Pete Lembo, who's I think one of the best ever.
Yeah, and
so he's phenomenal. I've worked really hard to integrate language in our program that is consistent, and I do think that the linebackers coach appreciates it when you walk up to him and says, "Hey, what's the term that our whole team should use? We talk about disengaging from contact and block destruction. Whatever you want, tell me. I'm going to use it. It's going to help. It's going to help your guys. It's going to help the whole team." And I did that with all different position groups. Hey, what do you talk about when you talk about avoiding contact? Hey, receivers coach, what do you say when you reduce your surface area to avoiding things like that? Right? There are universal principles of football that ultimately we all are saying in many of us in different ways. Well, there is a unity that comes and is strengthened if we all agree as a staff to say the same words. And we have Jason Candle, our head coach, and that was what I interviewed on. He said teach. I taught him a framework of language, and he loved it. And when he hired me, he said, "This is what we're doing." I presented in front of the whole staff a presentation of, hey, here's X amount of football truths, however many it was. Let's say it's called 15 words. I presented not as this is what we're doing. I presented it as let's discuss this. What else? What other ways could we say this? What's best? And I gave everyone on the staff an opportunity to interject and say, I actually think it's more efficient to say this, or hey, this is what I already say, etc. So that helped a lot.
Yeah.
But then, it sounds cliche, but the head coach needs to hammer it.
Oh,
and there's no doubt about it.
No question about that.
And Coach Campbell has done a phenomenal job at that. I have a lot of – I'm really lucky. I mean, one of the reasons why I love my job is I don't have that issue very much at all. But I have a lot of former special teams coaches that are position coaches. They love it because it's kind of like they want to scratch that itch too. They love it when they get in charge of a drill, and they do an awesome job. But I think ultimately that was where I think we got off on the right foot. Was when we decided together, like, hey guys, this isn't just my thing. I want you. This is our thing, and that helped a whole lot.
Yeah, you talk about buy-in and how awesome is it? Me as a former receiver coach to be able to maybe get in front of the team and talk about releases to the guys on punt.
Yes.
And talk about how he gets skinny and use my buzzwords and how much ownership do I have now versus, hey Mario, get out there and run this. How invested am I going to be? That's a great point, man. And so I do have to ask this. You mentioned Coach Limbo. Well, I guess were you with him at South Carolina? At what point did y'all cross?
So I got a call from, I got a text out of the blue after the 2020 season from Pete Limbo.
Okay.
And he was asking if I'd be interested in being a special teams analyst at South Carolina. So Coach Beamer hired him out of Memphis, and I never met either of them, but there was an interesting connection between Coach Beamer and I because he was helping run the special teams at Oklahoma when I was at K-State. So he had a close eye on what was happening in the Big 12. We actually had a funny story where we played each other in 2020 in a really tight game, and we blocked a punt on them in the fourth quarter, and we ended up winning the game. And he told me I think it's the first time he's ever had a punt block. But that was a weird, I think more or less, I don't know exactly how my name got in there other than I know Coach Beamer knew of me, but I started receiving correspondence from them. But here's another really cool story. How that went down. So Coach Lembo was doing an awesome job of getting me interested. But it was not a shoe-in for me because I was going to be going from being the guy in charge, essentially making a lot of decisions, to I was going to take a step back and be a supporter of a true coordinator. You know, he didn't have a position. It was going to be, I'm no longer in a really dynamic, exciting role of being in charge like I was at K-State. And I was leaving family and, leaving home, but I ultimately decided it was probably what was best. And my dad, who's probably my best friend and mentor, was probably the only one that was kind of playing devil's advocate. Like, are you really sure you want to walk away from this incredible thing?
Yeah.
Like, it might not ever get better than you being home at your alma mater, et cetera, et cetera. And when Coach Beamer caught word that more or less the one thing stopping me from probably jumping in was my dad, he called my dad. He told him, which was incredibly cool. He said, listen, I know what it's like. I coached for my dad.
Yeah, that's right. I
know what it's like to leave Virginia Tech. I know what it's like to take that chance. But he said, listen, this is the best thing that I could have ever done in the coaching profession. And he said, I promise I'm going to help Stanton get a job that's, beyond this. And it's going to be great for his career. And what a first class thing that was. But just like that's Shane Beamer, he's phenomenal, but I ultimately did. So yeah, I worked for him, in 21, 22. I worked for those two, directly under Coach Lembo. And I went from having a lot of beliefs of things that worked really, really well, with Bill Snyder, Sean Snyder, special teams philosophies, essentially. Chris Kleiman, North Dakota State, they had some stuff that they were having us do on the coverage side that were a little different than what we did at K-State. But like, I had this, portfolio of essentially of schematics and beliefs. And I walk into Coach Lembo, sits down. We watched the entire 2 seasons that I was at K-State. He asked me questions about stuff. This, that. And our philosophies are so different.
Yeah.
and his stuff works so well. And so I had this incredible opportunity to go from, this is what I believe, and I know it works, to, we're not doing any of that. We're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew so much. And it was fun. It was fun being a guy that got to support that. And it was fun having incredible discussions between Pete Lembo and then Shane Beamer would walk in and say, all right, what are we doing this week? And we'd sit there at this 3:00 meeting every Monday and be like, we are essentially pitching what we've got prepped. And for the vast majority of the most part, Coach Beamer was very much like, yep, we're going to do that. Good, I'm good. But he could poke holes and stuff very well.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Fair, right? Like, yeah. But he never really intruded. Like, it was always ultimately our decision. But I didn't love the moments when they were going back and forth about something, and they look at me and go, "All right, Stan, what do you think?"
Which side am I going to be on?
And I'm sitting there like, "Oh boy." Yeah, because and it didn't happen that often, but I was very much a guy that just was supporting and trying to be a really good teammate and had to sort of take a back seat because it's not my job to be the schematics guy if you're the analyst, right?
Right.
It's not my job. So we can have opinions that maybe differ, which ultimately I sat back and said, this is going to work too, and absorbed it. But it was a fun experience because it was an interesting opportunity to learn about management style too. Because you think Coach Beamer has opinions about special teams, like big time. But do you think he hired Coach Lembo to be a guy that has to get nitpicked by him all day long? No. And that's not how he did it. He let us operate as a special teams department and had small input, but also let us do our job. It was amazing, right? And so that was a really masterclass way of managing us, I thought.
Yeah, and I think kind of the way your jobs laid out are very interesting. This is not a cookie cutter profession. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this podcast because everybody's journey is so different. But you kind of in this unique role where you're 24, 25 and you're over the special teams, which most cases, that's not just, I mean, you know it, right? That's not going to be the case nine times out of 10.
Yep.
And so having to your next job be, release those duties got to be challenging for you, just to a certain extent. Sitting in
Sure.
that meeting, going through every snap at K-State and explaining what you're doing, and ultimately have it been like, oh, cool. Whoosh, all right, this is what we're doing. Had to be maybe not disheartening from a guy like Pete Limbo, where he knows his stuff, but there has to be a little bit of like, damn, I thought this was pretty good.
There was initial, like, well, we'll agree to disagree there, but it wasn't so much tear it up. It's like, hey, I know that worked, but that contrasts what I teach. And
right.
so, but we're going to teach what I teach. And what it ended up being was, just take this, in 2019, on KOR, K-State, with our KOR in it, we had four touchdowns on KOR. Memphis had 3 and got 1 called back, so they really had 4. And the 2 schemes couldn't be more different.
Absolutely.
And so I'm sitting here, I was honestly very excited to learn that. I was saying, I don't know, or I would never have taught that way, but it works. Mm-hmm. And I know it works, and I believe it's going to work. And that's the key, right? Like, if you don't necessarily say, I do it that way, you gotta be ready to have a posture in your brain of, but it's going to work if I believe it's going to work and I help it to work. And I shouldn't feel disgruntled. And I never did. Yeah. I never sat there like, this is dumb. Never. Because we didn't do anything that wasn't sound. We didn't ever do anything that wasn't real. I took that as more as, I'm so lucky that the growth meter now is off the charts. Yeah. Like, this all is going to work too, but I was a 3-man shield guy. He was a 2-man shield guy. I got to learn all about that. When it comes to KOR, he wants to drop nice and squared and not to disguise return direction. I don't do that. Right. It's just like, there's all these variety of things that it allows you to grow so much. So, the key in my total attitude from it was, and I never questioned it because I knew it would work, was I'm here to learn.
Right.
And I'm here to support. And I do think it's cool that there were moments where I knew something that was really hard on him that I may not have known was hard on him unless I was in that chair. That makes sense. Like, there's moments you're kind of lonely as a special teams coordinator, but I'd been there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't me, the analyst, going, I don't know. We feel sometimes, I think, when we look at some leaders, we say, man, that guy doesn't know what the heck he's doing.
Yeah.
And then you sit in that chair and you're like, wait a second. And then go to a point where you're no longer there. I'm supporting the guy in the chair. I never once thought to myself, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, because I knew how hard it is sometimes to have the right answer.
Right.
There is no right answer. We're doing our best. Like, and so there was a lot of moments where, I think maybe it helped me that I'd been the guy before, more so than it frustrated me.
Yeah.
It was more so like, I think I can try to support this guy a little better because I know how challenging that staff meeting just was.
Yeah.
I know that was hard. I know that was hard to hear somebody change something on them late when we work so hard, and it's not, and I'm sitting there going, man, that sucks. And I can be a guy they can talk to about it. Like that happens sometimes, and it happens in every staff. Right. But I think that experience helped me have the posture of like, man, I just want to support this guy. And I know that was hard, and I'm here to help him versus, wow, that was a bad decision. Why did we do that?
Right.
I never, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, you were able to kind of take that role in such a unique position because you sat in that chair even at such a young age. Right. Now, I do have to ask this question, and a little bit of it's speculative, I guess. But honestly, how easy would it have been in 2020 to say, Coach Beamer, Coach Limbo, I love it, but I got to decline. I'm in a good situation here. I'm at home. I've been here. I would assume if your dad was a color for all those years that you grew up there, right?
Yep. Yeah. And he still is.
Right? Stop. It's home. I'm good. I'm in my alma mater. I'm good.
Right.
And let's say once again, this is speculative. You get the job in 23 at Toledo, and you decide to finally make a change, and you've just been at case. How different of a coordinator would you have been? Basically, I guess saying all this to say how transformational was that experience to kind of get out.
Oh, it's a great question. I would be nowhere near as good a coach I am now. I mean, to say it good, I mean, I would be nowhere near as I don't know. I know so much more.
Yeah.
Like that was a baptism of something I didn't know till I knew it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Those years were hard in a lot of ways, but I grew so much. So exiting my comfort zone was critical.
Amen. Yeah.
Critical.
Right.
And let's go back to what I said about the three sort of things, right? Network, growth, and money. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, the networking obviously was going to expand. Now, I think here's how I would define, well, coach, when do I know that I've satisfied that networking piece? I tell young guys, if everyone in the building would describe you as a guy they would want to hire, what else is there to do? Mm-hmm. From the networking piece? Not much, right? If you're to a point in your growth where you are comfortable, what's left, right? And I was not there totally, but somewhat there. Like year one, I was swimming, right? Drowning, right? Year two, I was got my strokes down, right? And I was ready to re-up with a lot of systems in place, a lot of dynamics with people in place, a lot of installs that were done, right? Like there's just a lot of hours that come with transition that were built upon, and the returns for growth were diminishing slightly.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that I'm going to go to a place and probably grow tremendously. You're telling me that I'm going to go to a place and totally dive into a network where I don't know anyone, which is risky. But ultimately, if you're a good person and a good coach and can get lucky with good people, it's the best thing ever. Mm-hmm. And then, third, as Coach Lembo, when he found out what I was making, he goes, "Oh, I'm gonna get you a little raise." So anyways, I got more money, which was, it was not the scales that tipped it at all. It was the other two things. Because as a young coach, like I can't stress enough, the money piece, it doesn't matter as much. Like, I am such a different coach because of the dramatic growth that I experienced in those 2 years. Such a different coach. I wouldn't be anywhere near as dialed into just looking at an opponent, understanding how other people can teach things. It helps so much. So, yeah, I mean, I think I might have lost my train of thought in terms of exactly what the question was, but that would, I would be nowhere near the coach I am. I wouldn't have met my wife. I mean, like all things that are, and so, I mean, I lean heavy into this. I put a lot of stuff at the feet of God, and I say, listen, you take it. I'm here to do a great job. And I know that if a door closes, it was for a reason. Yeah. And if a door opens and it's the right thing, I'll know. And I knew the moment I knew was in prayer. I was like, yep, this is it. Felt totally calm about it and did it. Yeah. And I was lucky to be given that chance.
Amen. Well, now 23 rolls around, and you go have this 2-year experience and have this tremendous amount of growth. Just talk about how you landed that job at Toledo with Coach Candle.
Oh, it was an interesting dynamic of that convention after 22. I had actually been given a chance to potentially interview at a school, and I was like, whoa, I get an interview. I'd never been, contacted for an interview to go be a coordinator at an FBS school until that convention. And I was very excited. And it wasn't Toledo. I was very excited. And, an agent that I had known from my time at K-State, who's now an agent. He was not an agent then. He was just working in our football program. He represented somebody and said, "Hey, this guy is going to interview you." I said, "Cool, great." I exchanged some texts with him. He says, "Hey, you're going to be around tomorrow. It's Mondays. I'm going to stick around until Tuesday." I never stick around until Tuesday of convention. I'm always out of there usually Tuesday morning, right after the national championship. But I'm going to stay. So I'm going to stay in Tuesday. I'm waiting around all Tuesday long for a text to, "Hey, well, this is when we're going to link up and we're going to interview." Never happens.
Oh man,
I got stood up. I got stood up. and it's 9:00 p.m. on Tuesday, and I've just been putting around hotel lobbies for the whole day.
Yeah.
And this agent texts me, "Hey, how'd the interview go?" Hey, this guy never talked to me. And he goes, "Oh, shoot, he's already back home." I said, "Okay." Got in my car, and I was very lucky. It was in Charlotte, and I was in Columbia. So, like, if this was a situation where I had canceled a flight, it would not have been as fun of a story. But I got in my car, and I drove home, got back, late, feeling a little defeated.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a good moment. And ready to start work again here, third year at Carolina. The very next day, Wednesday, I get a call from that same guy. He says, "Hey, I just had a conversation with Jason Candle. He's looking for a coordinator." I said, "Oh, awesome." He said, "He's going to call you." He calls me like 3 minutes later.
Okay, good.
I'm on an interview the next day. A week later, he hires me. There's more or less just, you know how it works. The people are looking for people, and I got connected. But it was a very interesting, again, an arc. Like, you're feeling pretty low at that point to, like,
yeah.
The greatest thing that could have ever happened to me was getting stood up for that interview, because I am in the perfect place now. And I've had 2 phenomenal years here. And my wife and I shake our heads often and go, wow, we're lucky, and how dare us not trust God's plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more or less just word of mouth. Again, it was a situation where I didn't know any of them from Adam, and jumped in. I had a cool interview where they had a situation where the coordinator at Toledo was actually the co-DC safeties coach, Ross Watson, who's been there for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he had just kind of got thrust into the role because their former guy had like a July offer from an NFL team and took off. So, he's on the interview with me, and he's like, "Hey, I'm just here to tell you, like, it's going to be great. Like, you ain't got to worry about me." And it was interesting, right? But, like, Ross Watson's my best advocate and supporter on our staff.
Yeah.
But all he's there to do is be a great teammate. And that was he was communicating that to me when they put him on that call with me. And so I was very fortunate to be considered, but, that was neat. So that's how I got started. And now it's been 2 years.
Yes. And I do want to ask this, because this essentially, I know Coach Linville kind of hit you up, and then that you had a kind of informal interview type situation with him.
Yep.
But this has been your first formal interview where you got to go in a room and you got to present. What were you doing over those previous 4 or 5 years, even starting off as a graduate assistant, kind of prepare for that situation in regards to, having cut ups and, just all the little things that you got to make sure you have prepared?
Sure. Oh, I'd say, in the special teams interviews that I've been a part of, it is very much like, hey, teach something to me.
Mm-hmm.
So having something on demand that is a really high quality presentation that you are totally comfortable presenting and believing in, and having that on your travel mode, Exos, like, having it.
Yeah.
That would be my biggest piece of advice, because, what I presented in my interview with Coach Candle was he wasn't, I had a whole nother cut up of schematics.
Yeah.
We really never talked about. He just wanted to know my teaching style, and he wanted to, and so I had something that was relatively basic, but it was right in my wheelhouse. I presented that thing a dozen times
mm-hmm.
to my, in instances of my players or whatever. Like, so it was something where being prepared is, yes, it's an active thing, I'd say, but like going with something that you're very confident in and is super well done. And that's a great starting point. And that's sort of where, I have that always prepped with me. And then, from there, I think a lot of coaches, when they review, especially, specs guys, like they want to know your style. And then from there, they might have questions about this or that. Having basic things prepared in terms of cut-ups for every scheme would be good, but ultimately make sure what you're presenting is something you've had taken reps at. Like
mm-hmm.
every time I present in front of my team, it's a 5-minute meeting. I rep that thing 5 times at least on my own.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's not out loud, but I am sitting there buzzing that cut up, saying, hey, this is what I'm saying here. Boom, 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 boom. So when it's up there, my 5 minutes is encapsulated of some impactful content, and it's efficient, and my inflection is great. my knowledge of what's next on the slide is already done.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even look at the stuff, right? You can, right? But you know exactly what coaching point you're making on this clip, et cetera, because I've taken the reps at it, right? Like that's something I think all of us coaches, whether it's your position meeting, whether it's a meeting in front of the whole team, like I take my time I get very seriously. And so the reps make it much more fluid. And so anytime you're in an interview, that's what I would recommend. And in a basic sense, like whatever you're repping, make it something that showcases your ability to teach and make sure you've taken reps at presenting it.
Coach, that advice right there, and this has been a powerful interview. That's a big chunk right there, because it's a guy I've actually ran into a couple times, and I won't mention his name. He wouldn't mind if I did, because he's doing very well in the profession. But he came for an interview in one of these places I was at, and it was one of those ones where the whole staff kind of sits in and they're in and out, and you got something to do. And I'm sitting in here, and the dude is killing it. He's killing the interview. He knows his stuff, but he's got a presentation, and he's this is how we install this. And our coordinator stands up, is like, hey, cut that off. I want to hear you teach. I want to hear you teach like on the board. And I mean, it went from one end of the spectrum to the other, because he didn't know it that thoroughly without the the notes and stuff showing up on the board. And man, it was one of those deals where you kind of liked the guy so much, you were just cringing for him as he was going through it. And and that's a big piece, because a lot of guys do rely heavily on that. And I've seen interviews go from anywhere between, I don't need to see your stuff, to, run through the whole thing or run through half of it. So you just better be prepared for all aspects of it. And that's a good chunk of advice. Now, Coach, we're approaching an hour here, and I want to make sure to take some time to talk a little bit about your experience here in 2025 at the AFCA convention. You were part of the 35 under 35 class. Just real fast, man. What was that experience like for you? Why would you encourage people to apply for it?
It was probably the best professional development I've ever done. And I don't think there is anything that probably compares to it in our profession. So if you're a young guy, you should be scrapping, clawing to get into this thing, because it's incredibly competitive. And the experience was phenomenal. I was prepping the article I wrote for a year in advance to make sure it was golden, ready to roll. And the things that we learned were things that it was having really, really impactful people in the profession speak in a much more like comfortable, intimate fashion. They weren't afraid to tell you things that they would not say necessarily to the media. Like, they wanted to help you and answer your questions. Obviously, as the director of coaching education, like, my hat goes off to you. You're doing a great job. But, whether it was having head coaches come in and give us these incredible pieces of advice, there were also things that were introducing elements that could help us. Like, we had Edge 4 talk to us about the personalities of our players and how that can help with our coaching styles, or a panel of agents, not knowing much about that field. They're prepping you to do that. Financial advice. But ultimately, the most interesting thing was getting to not only make it to that group, but getting to meet the other guys that were in that group. Like, I have all their numbers saved. I know in the future that our relationships will be leveraged in some form or fashion to help myself help them, or them help me in some form or fashion. And there is nothing cooler than an expanding network like we talked about, but with other people that I know went through the rigorous process of preparing something that is incredibly difficult to do in a high professional manner and being selected. I would recommend it in spades to anyone that's interested, but I would recommend them do this. Like, don't take it lightheartedly. Start preparing in advance, right? Like, the July 1st, I think might be the beginning of applicants. Maybe I was prepping for this in this July period. I didn't want to throw something together because of that, but I can't say enough good things. I hope in the future I'll be asked to come back and speak to that group, because I would want to meet them all the new ones every year. So
absolutely. Well, Coach, I appreciate the endorsement. I appreciate you help elevating that program. And for those that don't know, I mean, probably one of my favorite articles ever written, and we get tons of them, was yours. And I'm pretty sure when I read it, I called you like right after I got done. I was like, man, I was a special teams coordinator, bro. I wish I met you like 2 years ago or something like that. Yeah. And so I can appreciate the time that you spent on it. And that, I mean, and that advice is phenomenal, because that is the difference. Some guys you can tell, hey, they just threw this together, and other guys you can tell that, man, they went with their production team for video, and this is high quality, and they are teaching, and it's, you know, it's not just some cut ups that are ripped off and voiced over, or you know, an article, you know, that had as much detail as what yours did. So anyways, Coach, we appreciate you, man, and you know, obviously if there's anything we can do on our end, please let us know. But we'll be supporting you. I look forward to seeing you at the 2026 convention over in Charlotte. Okay.
Can't wait. Thanks for everything, Coach.
All right, thanks, man. I enjoyed it. Later.
When communication counts, trust the headsets trusted by the best. From high schools to the biggest college programs, CoachComm keeps coaches connected and teams prepared to win. Learn more at CoachComm.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.